Okay, so now that we've watched that video, which I loved, um, we'll get started here. So we have three presenters today. There was originally four, but one was having technical issues. And I'll start by introducing them. But first, I also want to say thank you for everybody who is attending today. It looks like we have a good amount of people. And this will be recorded, so it can be reviewed later if you couldn't make it or if you know somebody who wanted to see it and they couldn't attend. But okay, so let me get started. So first we have, when I say your name, because I'm not sure what order you are on everyone's screen, could you just like wave or something? And then I'll do your short bio and then, or I'll just grab your picture, Dimitri, so that people know which one you are. Okay, so first we have Phil Rounds. He's actually a TCC alumni. He graduated in December 2019. And now he attends NSU and majors in psychology with a minor in recreation. His immediate goals are to graduate with his bachelor's in psychology and to then graduate with the master's degree in counseling, which is good for you because that's a lot of school. And he sees himself working with people of all ages and disabilities, but especially those who are disabled so that he can help them avoid the challenges that he encountered through education and probably in life. And then next we have Dimitri Tyliki. I hope I said your name right. He's a current TCC student extraordinaire, I said, after I saw all he's involved in. He's majoring in pre-education, but he's also Director of Administration for Student Government Association and the Social Events Chairman for our National Society of Leadership and Success. And then we have Anna Smoko. I don't actually see her, but I'm sure she's here. Anya is deaf, and she was originally from the Ukraine, but she moved to America in 2015. She graduated high school in 2018 and then began to attend TCC. She attends here to learn more about, to originally learn more about American Sign Language and English, because it wasn't her first language. Before coming to TCC, Anya did not know what she wanted to do, but she found that she had a real passion for deaf education. So she wants to become a teacher for deaf children and help them to develop their own language, or not their own language, but the language. And she's grateful to be a part of today's event. Okay, and then I'm going to get into part of our discussion. So you guys can answer in any order you want to, and just chime in when you feel like you have something to add. So first I wanted to see education through your eyes. The whole point of this is to be able to step into a day in the life of somebody who uses our services, but is just also having to go through every day with a disability. So with that said, can you start by letting us in on how you try to navigate educational environments as opposed to someone without disabilities and how different that might have been? Oh, America's here. I have a bio for her. Just in case. Before we answer that question, sorry, let me introduce America DeGear. She says she has been mentally disabled all her life and physically disabled since 2018. She was bullied as a kid, but she doesn't blame those people because they were just not educated on disability, which I think is a really good way of looking at it. In addition to being a TCC student, she runs an advocacy blog for both mental health and physical disability to shed light on the fact that there should be no shame in having disability. So thank you for joining us today. And I'll rehash the question just because you probably didn't hear it. So I would like to start off by letting everybody see what it's like to be a day in the life of an accessibility resource student. So can you start by letting us in on how you've had to navigate educational environments? I won't choose who to answer, so you guys can just jump in when you want to.
Okay, I'll start then.
Okay.
I have two experiences, both with the four-year school and coming to TCC before I came this most recent time and graduated, when the world was much different, even with ADA and accommodations for disabilities. And it was more challenging because my disabilities are unseen. One's learning disabilities with math and writing. And then I also have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And so sometimes people don't completely understand. And in the past, there wasn't any help at all. And coming to TCC the second time around was day and night. Like, it was just amazing how much they could help. And they explained the whole process, like how to get connected, what documentations they needed. They made it all very clear. Yes, you still have to have the courage to seek them out and find out about them, and also talk with your professors before class or each semester to start that process after they get the letter from accessibility resources. But without accessibility resources, it's more of an uphill battle and a challenge to learn and make progress in college.
Gotcha. And yeah, I feel like definitely college would be an uphill battle for almost anyone. I would know, but I do like to see it from different perspectives. And so thank you for answering. And unless anybody else, Dimitri or anyone wanted to, or Ghana, wanted to answer, then we can move on to the next question. And then I'll also take a second to type out the question because in the chat, because America is having trouble hearing. Oh, she's gone. So never mind. Okay, so what are some changes that you would like to see? Like, you could either specify it to education, or you could specify it to or generalize it to the world. But what are some changes that you would like to see in the future, like as it pertains to disability in the world?
I'll go. Some of the changes that I think would be beneficial in education and in the world is that I think there needs to be more of a discussion about what a disability is nowadays and the different kinds of disabilities that there are. As I don't remember his name, but as he was saying about how it's not really known and people don't understand it, I agree. People don't understand somebody with a disability, especially if it's one that you don't see. Like when somebody's in a wheelchair, that is a very clear disability. But I feel like the other side of disabilities aren't known as much or talked about or discussed. So that then teachers are fighting an uphill battle trying to accommodate those disabilities, but also not understanding what they need to do to help.
Gotcha. Yeah, because, well, when I think about non-physical disabilities, then and then how people approach them, it is hard to, you know, just look at someone and say, well, I have to treat them differently. So, and not wanting to do that because that can be seen as offensive. Do you have tips on how somebody could navigate dealing with you, even if it doesn't have to do with education? Just for clarity.
I guess I would say from my experience, just take the time to talk with me, and I meet with my professors or other people, like if it's a work environment with my employers and coworkers, and I talk them through it so to try and explain it so it'll make more sense to them so they can better understand it. Besides, you know, doing the normal part with ADA of providing the documentation to prove that it is a legitimate documented disability, but just having an open mind to discuss it. And also each individual person, even if they have similar disabilities, you have to approach accommodations individually, case by case, because what one person like person A needs is not the same thing person B needs, even if they both have the same exact disability, because it's how much it affects them or how it affects them, whether they have medication or other things to help deal with it. Sometimes you just need to make sure you really get to know the individual and then be flexible and willing to work with other people.
Gotcha. Well, you know, with that said, I recently saw where someone said that without friction, and when she said friction, she meant to say obstacles, people don't grow. Growth, you need friction for growth, personally and emotionally. So, in light of that, do you feel that if in a world where disability is treated as it is, are you getting obstacles removed for you, and that's hindering your growth, or do you feel like it's not, we're not at a point societally or in education environments where we have successfully removed those in a way to where people are not coddled but accommodated? If what I said just made sense. Okay, she can't see. So did you guys have any comments on that? Like do you feel like there needs to be more, like I know you said you liked accessibility resources here at TCC, but I will tell you from all the places I've been and education environments I've seen, this is not the usual. So do you feel like every place should set this place like an example? Or is it good to have sometimes less help, and you have to kind of figure it out more? Like,
I would say a mix of both, but I would say compared to what I saw in the past history with higher education, you guys have done a lot, but the student still has to seek you out and make the initial contact, which is hard for some people who don't know how to self-advocate, like ask for help for themselves. And because it's hard the first time you go to a new school, you have to navigate stuff. Like where I am now at NSU, it's a little bit different. You still have to seek it out, and the documentation process, their formatting and all that's different. Yes, there's lots of progress that's been made where it's more accommodation based, but at the same time, students, or if you're, when you get a job as an employee, you still have a lot of responsibility to seek out the help or notify the employer or the school you're attending. It's better, but sometimes they coddle you if they don't know enough. It just depends.
yeah. So there definitely should be some sort of standardization. But then again, it has to be individual to the person. So tricky environment to navigate. But I think that's why the conversations like this are so important, so that people can gain more insight on how people who actually have to navigate these channels every day feel about how we should respond. And with that said, also, so to dispel any like stigmas that you've ever heard or you've come in face-to-face contact with, what is one misconception that you've heard of or that you've had to deal with that you want to clear up?
I know for me, I used to hear all the time, oh, it's just a medication thing. Just take one medication and it'll fix everything. It's not strictly a medication issue. It's a whole nother issue. So it's just a lot of people are in the mindset of if you just throw medication at it, it'll fix the problem. And I've heard that for most of my life, that just take medication, it'll fix everything.
Yeah, and that's honestly a problem in the medical world just in general. But yeah, I can see how misconceptions like that can be damaging, especially when not everything, yeah, like you were saying, like the treatments for some things are not even, they don't even involve medication. And so, yeah. Did anybody else want to answer, say one misconception? Anya?
Well, I'd say, being from Ukraine and then moving here to the United States, I would say it's been really good from an educational standpoint. And TCC really does a great job. And the air department, I think they're doing really well. With the RCDHH and everything, I think it's going really well with the tutors and everything. So I think we're doing well here.
All right, so let me go to the next question. Okay, let me go to, I'm gonna skip that one. So during this pandemic, everybody has had to adjust to the new way of doing things. But what are some challenges that have been worse for you in this environment, or do you feel like it's really highlighted some of the issues that should have been fixed a long time ago, and now you're getting some steam behind, like more interpreters availability and more captioning, things like that? Because we've all had to adjust to this new remote world. So are you finding that it's better for you or more difficult?
For me personally, I have chronic illness, so it made it a little more difficult with my immune system. And I've noticed both a good and bad perspective of this whole situation. TCC has gotten so much positive reinforcement on my side with how they're coping and how they're screening and how the campuses are now laid out. It makes me feel a lot more safe and well managed to go to school. But I still understand, like with immune compromised issues, that it's made things really difficult to go out and do things the way that you used to be able to do.
Gotcha. Yeah, because personally, I found that I kind of like some of the changes that have been made, but I wish we could just get rid of the whole that there being a disease ravaging the world. Okay, so unless anybody else wanted to comment on that one, I'll go to the next one. Okay, so as students, or Phil, in your case, graduates of TCC, what is one of your proudest moments as a student here where you felt like you were able to accomplish something that you didn't think you'd be able to before? And anyone can answer.
For me personally, again, just attending school regularly. It's been such a highlight of my life, is being able to go out and to be more responsible as a person, be able to be more individual, and to be able to actually reach a point in my life where I can do things once again. And I think TCC has a lot of accessibility accommodations for that, which has helped exponentially.
For me personally, something that I never thought I would be able to do was I was put into a leadership position for the student government, and I'm in a leadership position for the National Society of Leadership and Success. So without the help of TCC, with the how to do the schoolwork and the accommodations to help me so I could manage that, I wouldn't have been able to be involved in all these other things that TCC offers.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, you definitely are a part of a lot of the student organizations that we have here. So that's really cool that we have that you are being that kind of representative on a lot of those in a lot of those areas. What about you, Phil?
I would say it's when I took behavioral stats. Math is my greatest weakness that shows up with my learning disabilities. So the first thing I did was, I approached the professor. She tried to help me and it wasn't enough. So then I came, and I believe my counselor at that time was still Ty Harrell in the, well, it was EAC then, AR, same thing. And he helped find some resources for me. Plus I was using the math and science lab, but also because I was in TRIO, I was able to get some help too. And it was because of using all those resources and being supported from the accessibility resources people, by the professor, and they could see all the work and effort I was putting in, working with all the tutors, both in the math and science lab that TCC provided, and then that TRIO provided. It made it possible for me, for the first time in my life, to pass a college level math class with an A, because before that, it would be barely getting a D, even with tutors and everything. So, I mean, it was because of this school, TCC, sorry, it's college, and the amazing people they have working there that really care about every individual student, and that they're willing, when you've done everything you can do, like doing extra problems, doing extra, going online, using resources that they provide. And they just went to bat and tried to help me when I hit a wall where it's like, I'm struggling and I want to learn this. And they made it possible for me to, not just be in school, but be successful in all my courses.
Well, I'm glad this department was able to foster that, but it's you guys who are making the accomplishments, and you just needed that extra, that accessibility, of course. That's what we're all about. But with, with that kind of thing said, was there anything when you were, finishing your degree, or when you're still completing it, that you found there wasn't like an accommodation for, or like if something wasn't accessible to you?
Actually, really quickly, Ms. Davis, I think Anya wanted to answer that last question.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, yes, I'd like to have an opportunity to answer that as well. I think for me, there's been a couple of struggles, because in the past, before COVID, we're going to class, we're meeting with teachers and everything. I'd meet with tutors, but in our new environment, with all the remote environment, with all the masks and everything being online, and trying to use Zoom, it's really been a struggle, because I definitely prefer an online or a in-person environment over online, but it's not really possible anymore. So you have to do what you have to do through Zoom and meet in person when it's possible. But I definitely prefer meeting in person. So I wanted to say that about the challenges as well.
All right. And I've been told to pause a little bit longer, so I will. Sorry. Okay, so
So I really believe that that's a really good, observation, and that we definitely need to take note to that, because when we send out these surveys and everything, we have to really pay attention to who actually answering the surveys, and then just to make sure that we are able to reach beyond our, I guess I would say, our box of thought, right? So we have to think outside of the box. And so our box of thought, we have to think beyond that and say, who voice are we missing out on to make things more equitable? And I'm so glad that Anya and brought that up, and that everyone on the panel is especially bringing that up, that there are challenges, and we do have some successes, and we thank you for those successes. but there's always more that we could get done. And so thank you so much for that.
And as far as my questions for this go, the structured questions, I've already gotten through them. So did anybody have anything that you, when you were told about you're going to be on this panel, that you thought you might want to say? No. Dean Todd, did you have any questions for them?
Yes, I actually do. I know that you probably know students at other institutions, right? And colleagues at other institutions. What are some of the things that you're hearing at other colleges that you would like to see us adopt here at TCC, or some of the challenges that they are experiencing at other colleges, but you haven't necessarily seen that here, but we might want to keep an eye out on? And I would like for everyone to kind of answer that.
I personally have to say, I haven't really heard of any challenges from other institutions, though I haven't really talked to people in a while, so there may be, but I haven't heard of any.
And this is Anya from Ukraine. Growing up there, there's no accessibility. There's no interpreters, nothing. They all just speak their language. So then moving here to America and having accessibility in high school as a sophomore, they provided an ASL interpreter, and I had to take ASL classes to learn new language. So that was an enormous challenge for me. But then upon transferring to TCC, I felt like it was so much better than I'd ever had before, because there were tutors, there were interpreters, there was socialization. And I'm the president of the ASL club, which has just been so much help. There's so much support there, and I've really enjoyed that. So I feel like TCC is so much better than it was in high school.
I want to continue with that because coming from a high school background, it was an awful experience for someone who's needing accessibilities to the point I do. So coming into college, it was a completely different world. And my brother, who is now in college too, has excelled exponentially thanks to the accommodations, whereas I've heard from his high school, they are starting to have issues with COVID and the masks and how to even accomplish like after school activities and just all of the social interactions they might have once had, whereas TCC has excelled with it thanks to Zoom meetings and all of that.
Oh, I'm sorry, Phil, did you want to answer?
Yes. From what I've heard, some of the problems are just with the challenges with getting the accommodations to work. In some cases, like it's hard to provide with the, even though it's online Zoom, like Zoom classes for me at NSU and at other universities, different programs, they've had trouble being able to somewhat access all the accommodations they had before, or transitioning them to an online class setting, which it's like, it's not as bad as it could be, but it's bad because when you don't get the necessary accommodations, like if you aren't able to get help with your writing, or sometimes it's harder to get note takers or getting a copy of their notes, whether it's electronic picture or whatever, or if it's interpreters. I don't know why sometimes they don't have enough interpreters for every student. And I think to me, that's not right, because how are they supposed to learn and communicate with each other and the professor? And it's just like, I don't know why it's like they act like they don't have money in some schools, but I don't know, it just bothers me. But well, like TCC, from everything I've heard, is continue to do an amazing job. And you guys have reached out with other resources, like even providing Wi-Fi to some students and making Wi-Fi accessible parking lots. Like you guys have done that more than other schools. Like you just go out of your way to help. The only struggle I've really had is communicating. Yeah, it's somewhat Zoom talking is like talking to your professor, but you don't get to know them as well as you do in a face-to-face class. And so sometimes it takes longer, even if you're doing email communication with that, to get your accommodations across, even if you get the letter from, they call it SDS, Student Disability Services here, but it'd be like if it was a TCC getting the AR letter to the professor, there's still there's a longer lag of getting that addressed and worked out.
Okay. Yeah.
You know what? So
I wanted to add to that too.
Okay, please.
TCC is really an awesome place, but one of the main problems anywhere, you know, is just deaf and hearing sometimes are separated. And so like if a professor is hearing, you know, it can be hard to email them because I prefer to talk, you know, through an interpreter. But if there's a last minute need, you know, what do I do in that situation? So I would prefer, like, if a professor could provide their phone number, and I could talk to them through a video phone with an interpreter there communicating for me. So instead of always having to rely on email. So I do wish that there were more accessibility and things like that provided in general.
Wow. I think that's a brilliant idea, right? Because one of the things that I was thinking of while everyone was answering, right, is how did you pick TCC? I mean, what kind of research did you have to do to say, you know, do they have the resources and the support I need to succeed? Because I would think, just based off of what Mr. Rounds was saying, is that your options are limited based on schools who can actually serve you. So how was that process of picking an institution? And I love that idea, and thank you for that. And I know we have a question. So after you answer, we do have a question, and I think Ms. Davis is going to ask that. So
yes. So previously, like I had been saying in high school, it wasn't, you know, as accessible, but obviously that's something that I'm kind of used to, and I'm kind of used to being alone and being on my own. And I did hear some feedback about TCC, and I heard from other deaf friends that they have a really good RCDHH. And so I said, what does that mean? And so they told me, you know, it's a resource center for deaf and hard of hearing. So then when I went into TCC and went in to talk to them, I'm so thankful for all that they've done. I'm so thankful for that. Because one day when I went in, I mean, the first time, you know, it's awkward. It's like I didn't know what to do. But now I'm in the habit, you know, I know what to do. I have other friends there. I have other ASL tutors. They understand what I've gone through. And so it is much different for me now than it was before.
Mm.
Did anybody else want to comment on how you chose TCC?
I personally never finished high school due to my disabilities and my learning hardships and the bullying aspect among high schools and how all of that comes about. And I had heard from a friend that TCC still allows you to attend as long as you can pass their tests, and it's not even the GED tests. So I went in and I took tests even with my anxiety. I'm working alongside Anthem Service Dogs to get a service dog for my disabilities as well. So I had a little support there, and I had passed and I got into college classes, and I had never believed I would be able to attend a college but thanks to their accessibilities and their support and all the help, I was actually able to get into college, and now I'm working towards my associates.
Hmm.
The way I came to TCC was my high school guidance counselor actually said TCC has a wonderful accessibility resources program. It's one of the best that I've seen. So when I heard about how well TCC's accessibility resources were for somebody like me, I was like, okay, I looked into TCC. I saw if they even offered a education major so that I could go there, and everything I saw just showed how great and how accommodating TCC was. So that's what led me to choose TCC.
I chose TCC because it was the best place for me to start to come back to school, and because I'd heard through the food chain, so to speak, that yes, the accessibility resources had greatly improved, and it was one of, if not the best in the state, it was the second best. I would say it's one of the best programs I've seen. And also for a lady that used to work in Trio that I knew from growing up from church named Judy Stevenson, she said, come back to TCC when you're ready to go to school, and also look into Trio. And so that gave me more positive news, and it actually encouraged me to come back. And after I met with accessibility resources people and then started that process, it just made it feel like it was the place I was supposed to be, and they made you feel like you belong too, not just AR, but all of TCC tries to be inclusive. Not everyone's perfect with that, and that's okay, they're growing, but it's nice to have a place where you don't feel like you're pushed to the side or have to be separated. It's like getting education in the least restrictive environment type thing.
I liked that answer. So we did have a question that came from somebody. Dean Todd, is it all right if we move on to the question and answer section? Because we have quite a couple questions.
Yes, and so for the question and answer section, and then we also have a question in the chat, but the question and answer section is I think that you kind of answered this, but I'm going to ask it again, is how can academic advisors serve students with disabilities better? And then how can we work to ensure an equitable experience for all students? And so these are our academic advisors are like really the first people that you see when you come onto campus. And so if you would, I guess what we're asking is like a one
go. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know my major or anything. So there was a friend who kind of helped explain, the process a little bit and help me know, like, hey, well, do you love children? And you love learning, you love teaching? And I was like, yes. And I said, well, why don't you go ahead and become a deaf ed teacher? And so being asked those questions really helped. And then I'm talking to my academic advisor. I sat down and I asked them, about the deaf ed teaching, and they said, absolutely, we'd love to give you information about that. Here are the classes. RCDHH has helped, again, providing interpreters for me to meet with my academic advisor. So it's really made me feel confident. And now, I've been coming for 2 years, and the classes have been great. I've been doing well, and everything's been a good experience in that part.
One way that I think academic advisors could help a little bit more, since I've been at TCC, I've had 3 different advisors assigned to me. I think it would be more helpful if we could have just one advisor. Like my advisors keep being moved to new offices, moved around. So then each semester I come back, I have a new advisor. So then I feel like I'm having to restart the whole process all over again so that they can understand what I need and how to help me. So if advising could, I don't know, like not move their advisors, it would be more beneficial, I think, for at least me when I need to reach out to my advisor, because I'm like, okay, so now who am I supposed to talk to? Who's my advisor? What do they know? Have I talked to them before? So I think that would be beneficial.
Adding on to that, I've noticed with my advisor personally is that they seem to be a little more scattered with their students. So maybe giving disabilities and accessibility of their own advisors that can understand their hardships and all of that would be a lot easier rather than giving just standard advisors who have a ton of different students where it feels less personal and less understood, and it's more of a challenge to get a hold of them or to get them to understand your point of view on how you're struggling with things or things like that.
I would agree with that. Oh, sorry, am I cutting somebody off?
No, go ahead.
I experienced that too, and even before they assigned advisors, it was you'd go to academic advising, you sign up, and whoever was available would see you. And even if you had one assigned, it did change too often because it was just starting right before I graduated when they assigned advisors. And so you'd have, like Dimitri said, you'd have to re-explain your whole story and then explain it even more. And sometimes some people would get it, some people wouldn't. And most of them, academic advisors, and I mean this respectfully, are younger. So their education should have included some, I would hope, unless it wasn't a liberal arts side, about accommodations and about inclusivity and about being more accepting. Because sometimes when you state it, they don't know enough about it, they almost think like, well, they don't know how they can help you. Even if you have a general idea where you want to go, or even if you've done career testing and it's pointed you toward a field, sometimes you get a runaround where they'll say they'll get back to you and they don't, where it takes longer because it seems like they have to call like every person in TCC before they can give you an answer or email them. And I don't mean that disrespectfully because I know TCC tries to hire the best people they can for each position, but sometimes it feels like they need maybe an extra training course or like when you guys used to do those Focus on Friday things, maybe have something a little more in depth about disabilities where you go over not just like a chunk of them together, but maybe have a longer series of them, even if it has to be webinar with COVID, so that people can get a better, like at least a basic understanding and gain some knowledge about the differences with disabilities. And especially if two people have the same disability, it might affect each individual different. So that means their accommodations would be different. But even if they both want to be doctors, like they might have a question about this class and want to make sure it connects well. And like I had to make sure with several of my classes where I had to check with NSU to make sure they would all transfer correctly. And I've heard other people have that with some of the like computer science degrees and even other like education degrees. Sometimes it's not, even though it's called a direct transfer, I think I'm using that term right, like where you can go from TCC automatically to another and you just start there like you're a junior. Those aren't always that smooth. Sometimes you end up having to take more courses.
You know what? Thank you for sharing that. And
also, I just wanted to add one idea
yes,
too.
please.
about the academic counselors, you know, they are wonderful and absolutely for hearing, but for the deaf, it would be great if there were more deaf counselors, because then you could have direct communication and you wouldn't have to be searching for a last minute interpreter and interrupt everyone's schedule. So it would be awesome if, you know, there were also in the AR, RCDHH, you know, having deaf counselors available who could communicate immediately with the students, and then you would have, you know, immediate access to communication with them.
That's fantastic. I think that you all are giving some great suggestions, and I know that some people in the chat are really taking note to your suggestions. And I just want to let you know, especially Phil, that this is a very candid conversation. We really want you to be real. So don't apologize for your comments, because we got to hear this stuff. Sometimes in order to grow, we got to feel uncomfortable, right? We got to know the good and the bad. And so I think I know through discomfort, we are able to grow. So thank you so much for being open, everyone.
And in mentioning the chat, there was actually a question posted concerning ebooks. Let me get to it. Okay. And the question was, what is you guys' experience with ebooks? Because I know that can be difficult for persons with disabilities. So what is your opinion on them, or do you listen to them? Like, how do you approach ebooks?
Personally, for me, it's been a little bit of a difficult experience with ebooks. I don't want to say I lack the ability to concentrate when it's electronic, but I just do so much better when it's a physical book. And a lot with like classes, when you're physically there, you can put more interest into it and more of your concentration, versus when you're at home, it's harder. So I've found that just going ahead and purchasing the books online and getting them delivered to me, so I have a physical copy, has made it a lot easier. Because I tried listening, and that it's not the same. I like to be able to write notes physically and put them in and just keep up with my class that way.
I totally agree with that. And I don't even have a disability that makes it more difficult, but I just really don't like ebooks. Okay, go ahead, Anya.
My experience with ebooks is somewhat tenuous. I would say, you know, with technology here at home, you know, or just in general, trying to keep the book in place while looking at the class on Zoom, it's really a lot easier to have a physical copy of the book just laying on the desk. Mm-hmm. It's sort of the same idea with being in person. I don't think I'd do an ebook for an in-person class either. I don't think it would work as well. I'd rather just have a book I can hold and read rather than using an ebook personally.
I agree completely. I personally don't like ebooks at all. I need a physical book in front of me that I can turn the pages of and keep up, because just as Anya was saying, it's hard to keep up on an electronic book while your professor's talking about it, and sometimes your professor will jump sections in the book, so then you have to try and in the ebook figure out where that section is. I like a physical book that I can turn the pages and go right to where I need to go.
For me, I also have migraines where I get visual impairment from it. So I can only read from a computer screen, even if I put a tint on the screen. But like with ebooks, it's hit or miss. I prefer a regular book because I can read from it longer. But some ebooks I can use sometimes if I can change the background color to black, because with it being the white color or another shade that's a darker than the white, it just makes it where I start getting a migraine, or if I don't have a migraine, it can either or at the same time affect my vision, where then I lose the ability to be able to read well or let alone drive. So I just try to limit. Every day I have to limit how much time I'm online, which is really hard when your classes are on Zoom, but I find ways to do that. So yes, I totally agree with everyone. I really prefer a paper book. And even when I've had classes where they only want you to use an ebook, even if I have to pay extra money to get the paper book, I do that because I can't always do it. And sometimes there's glitches, whether it's my internet or the connection to where you're reading the book for the course. Sometimes it's not always smooth, where you can't always access it when you need to, like 24/7.
Gotcha. So it sounds like we found the one place where us millennials do not want technology, because I too like paper books instead. Okay, let's see if we have any.
I wish that is.
Go back to the lab, please.
What?
I'm sorry. I thought I was muted. I was talking to my kids.
That is fantastic. That is fantastic. You know what I find is so interesting, and this is based on your answers from earlier in the conversation, is how it wasn't necessarily you looking us up online that pushed you towards TCC, but it was word of mouth. Right? Someone talked to you about coming here and raved about our services. And then at that point, you looked it up, right? And so, I mean, I feel that the word is kind of getting out about how awesome we are at serving our students and finding their needs. Now, you did kind of talk about transferring from here out, okay? If you want to transfer to a 4-year school or you're done, right? Are you also looking for those services at a different institution? And then how's your thought process on that? Because now I want to brag on TCC and say we do it the best, right? And so how do you look at other institutions? And so is everyone here looking to transfer, or are you just going right out into the world? That's my first question. And then my second question is, what other 4-year institutions you think will be able to help you continue your education? And
So I do plan on transferring to a 4-year institution. Actually, my plan was to go to NSU once I complete my degree here. So I have started doing the research into their accessibility resources and to see if they are up to the same par as TCC's. And I haven't deep dived into their resources yet, but I've started the process of seeing how they will transfer over.
And so, yeah, I've been considering my options for after TCC. I'll probably maybe look at working and gain some work experience. And then I will probably eventually transfer. I'm looking at going to Gallaudet University in Washington, D.C., because I think it'd be a great experience. There's, it's a primarily deaf university where the professors and students all use sign language to communicate. And so I think in terms of accessibility, communication-wise, I think that's a place where I can really, establish some roots and be very successful in that regard.
Kind of a side note, but Anya, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but the university you just mentioned, is that the one that will be featured in the Netflix Deaf U series?
Yes. Yep. That's what they're talking about, is Gallaudet University. That's right.
Okay. Everybody watch that, by the way, when it comes out.
Yeah, and there's and thank you for that. Thank you for that plug. There's a book that I read, I think about 10 years ago, when it was about, I think it was called The Sound of Winning, and it was about their women's basketball team competing. And so I thought it was a really good book, and I believe if I can find it, I will put it in the chat. But yeah, that institution is an amazing institution. So thank you for sharing that.
Okay, so we've all kind of like touched on what you guys want to do in the future, but is there something that your experience through TCC or any other institution that has made you want to advocate maybe through your career in the future for disabled kids or students in the future? Like, I know, Phil, you want to be a counselor, but do you want to use that to make education better for people with disabilities?
Yes, I do. My parents, when I was first in elementary, well, it was when preschool where I was first diagnosed with learning disabilities and then other stuff too. But they tried everything they could. They met with the school board, everything, and they wouldn't make changes. They weren't providing the services required by the law at that time, but there wasn't real federal enforcement. So my parents had to move a school district just for me, and I have a younger sister, just so I could get more services and have an IEP, which is an individual education plan, and other additional things so I could actually have accommodations. And then when I first went to college, yeah, they had a so-called ADA program, but there was nothing there other than a person sitting in the office. And so I struggled. And so I came home, tried TCC. It wasn't the right fit at that time. And then I worked. And when I came back to TCC, it seemed like the world had changed a lot. I mean, there's still room for improvement, don't get me wrong, but the accommodations and the professors would actually talk to you about them, made it a whole lot better. And it's easier now in some ways once you get the documentation and it gets approved by the department, but sometimes there's still challenges when people still have mindsets of either choosing not to understand or don't want to take the time to work with you or you attempt in dialogue, because I've had that with a couple professors, even when I was most recently at TCC, but I made it work and I got through the class. But I hit a wall, but I've just learned to not give up. And it's the biggest thing I could say. When you start encountering roadblocks, barriers, whatever, if it's people, institutions, buildings, whatever it is, go ask for help. And if one person doesn't know, keep asking. Because what I found is, even if I don't know the answer, like I know I could call AR and talk to anybody or go there. Ty, Amber, all the people there. Lonnie will go to bat for you. I mean, and if there's something that's not being done right, trust me, if your counselors can't get it done, Lonnie will straighten it out, especially if it's a misunderstanding of what ADA says in federal law or anything. I mean, all of those people in the ER go the extra mile for you. And it's a real blessing, because sometimes it's like, yeah, they get the email, but sometimes they just don't care. And TCC is lucky to have more people that are at least willing to work with you and make a difference.
Go ahead, Anya.
Yeah, I would say that, unfortunately, deaf and hard of hearing people often aren't really aware of how great things are at TCC. In high school, when they're looking at different institutions, it's not automatic that they know that TCC has all these great things. So, I was wondering, maybe it'd be good if, like the ASL club might go to, here at TCC, go visit some high schools and talk to some of those, say, hey, you need to know about these awesome things happening at TCC, and maybe they'll be like, oh, and maybe they'll gain some excitement about post-secondary education. We might gain some students out of that. So, that might be a good idea for the future as well. As so what we could do is go to high schools and talk to the students, the students with disabilities, and just say, hey, look, TCC has got this going on.
So it sounds like a trend of both representation, so like that there's always representation in every aspect of everything, so that people feel like they have a safe place to self-advocate, but that students do have to take that that step. So do you have any like tips on how to not be afraid to self-advocate for yourself in situations?
If I'm not interrupting anyone, I run a advocacy Instagram and Tumblr about disabilities and the daily life of having to work around them. And it at first was really hard for me. I was scared of maybe the backlash or the feedback or what people would think of me, because I have to go around and do things at my own pace and in my own ways. And I've actually found it's a much more positive association to get out there and to advocate your situations and the places you go or the people you meet, because there are a lot of people out there who are like us and who need that support and need that help, and to know that there are places and people and they're just not alone. And so by doing that, I've made so many friends, and I've been able to help a lot of people to reach goals that they previously thought that they might not have been able to reach. So I definitely am a supporter of anyone who thinks about self-advocating.
All right. I like that answer. Let's see what we've got next. Okay, so we got like 15 minutes left.
Yeah, well,
and, go ahead.
yes, you know, we have one more video to show to end us out for today, and everyone has done a fantastic job in communicating with us, and I think that it has been a really great conversation, right? I just want to, I guess, we just want to leave off with this. Is there any kind of last words that you want to say that we didn't get to today before we kind of show this video to end up our session? So is there anything that you really wanted us to hear that we did not ask today? No? Well, fantastic, I guess. But you know what? Even if we don't, even if you don't speak on it today, please reach out to me, or I know we have Dean Adams and a couple other amazing faculty and staff members on this call. You already know who you can reach out to. Your students are plugged in a little bit. And just let us know that what we can do. And you're like, you know, I should have asked that one thing, or I should have mentioned that one thing. And I want to really thank our moderator today, Miss Davis, for the fantastic job she did in answering our questions and leading this discussion. And you all, thank you so much. This won't be the last conversation we have, okay? This is not a one and done kind of thing. We really want to continue to plan for other events, right? Where we can also hear your voices. And so hopefully you are able to lend your voices to other issues or other celebrations that we're doing here at TCC. And I know we're going to see more of Miss Davis and her facilitating skills and everything. I just put you on the spot. You're being videotaped, so you can't say no. So I'll kind of put everyone on the spot. But no, thank you. And I see in the chat people are thanking y'all and really celebrating you. And so what we're going to do is we're going to play this video, and then after the video, we're going to end this session. And I want to say thank you to everyone who attended this session today. And if you have any questions, please reach out to my office, me, to Accessibility Services. I saw Trios in there. You can reach out to Trios, SSS, and just let us know how we are able to help. And we're going to see if we can get this video set up. Miss Davis, is there anything else you wanted to say before we jump off?
I did see a comment that somebody asked America if you are comfortable with it to put your Instagram. They wanted to check out your Instagram. So, but other than that, thank everyone for coming. Oh, go ahead, girl.
Yeah, I'm comfortable. It's just chronically_Erica, and that's where you can just see my stories of my daily life and wipe it up with.
All right.
Do you want to put that in the chat, America?
If you aren't set up to do it, I can do it.
Okay. Let's see. Make sure I get this right.
Okay, it's in the chat now.
We're broken down and tired of living life on the merry-go-round. And you can't find a fighter, but I see it in you, so we gon' walk it out. Ooh, mountains, we gon' walk it out. And mountains. And I'll rise like the day. I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. And I'll rise up, like the waves. I'll rise up, in spite of the edge. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. For you, for you, for you, for you. The silence isn't quiet, and it feels like it's getting hard to breathe. And I know you feel like dying, but I promise we'll take the world to its feet. Ooh, mountains, bring it to its feet. Ooh, mountains. And I'll rise like the day. I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. For you, for you, for you, for you. All we need is hope, and for that we have each other, and for that we have each other. Yeah, we will rise, we will rise, we will rise. Oh, we'll rise. I'll rise up, rise like the day. I'll rise up, in spite of the age. I will rise 1,000 times again. And we'll rise up, like the waves. We'll rise up, in spite of the ache. We'll rise up, and we'll do it 1,000 times again. For you, for you, for you.
And once again, I would like to say thank you, and that will end our program for this afternoon. See you next time. Bye, y'all.